Hi, guys, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Andy. I am the clinical lead here at ReadyCare. And in today's short session, what we're going to be doing is talking about the carnivore diet. Now, not a lot of people have heard of you know the term carnivore, meaning to eat meat, but not a lot of people have heard of the carnivore diet as an intervention for autoimmune conditions, diabetes, weight loss, blood pressure, cholesterol, chronic diseases. Not limited to those, but there are just a few worth mentioning. So let's talk about the carnivore diet. This is something that I have personal experience with that has been an absolute game changer for my own personal health, and is particularly important for anyone looking to treat autoimmune conditions. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've got, broadly speaking, different types of or groupings of conditions. You have chronic conditions which are rooted in metabolic poor health, and they would be things like obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, dyslipidemia, which is high levels of harmful cholesterol, more specifically high triglycerides, low HDL, and various different conditions that are linked to metabolic issues. Now, for metabolic issues, there's no question a low carb or ketogenic diet are the most efficacious. They're the most advantageous if you're going to tackle those underlying metabolic health problems. If you don't have metabolic health problems, or maybe you do have them, but you also have autoimmune problems. So autoimmune problems are a different group of conditions which are not so much related in metabolic ill health like diabetes, obesity, and blood pressure. They're more rooted in damage that's stemming from gut dysfunction. So dysfunction of the gut lining, which is known as your endothelial lining, where you have a compromised endothelial lining or gut lining, to use an easier phrase. You can have undigested food particles and lots of other chemicals go through the body, seep out and leak out into the bloodstream. And the body's response is to say, this is a foreign substance invading. I don't recognize it because it's not in the usual form that I see it in. And it mounts an inappropriate immune response to that particular chemical element. So, for example, you can have underactive, overactive thyroid. You can have multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, eczema, psoriasis, lupus, lots of nerve disorders. There's lots of very aggressive disorders. Skin ones are the most common ones, thank God, because the other ones are brutal. But you can, even with something like psoriasis left untreated, it can end up going on to psoriatic arthritis and be crippling. So my own personal background, and the reason I got into a carnivore diet personally, was because for years I had, for as long as I can remember, 20 years. I'm nearly 43 now, I'm 42. So since I was in my early 20s, I had joint pain that I couldn't really explain as mechanical. I always thought my lower back was always killing me. My middle back and my shoulders were always really sore, really, really sore. I was constantly taking painkillers and putting on gels and hot water bottles, all that sort of stuff. And I also had psoriasis. So it just kind of a white, kind of flaky, almost was like dandruff on one side of my head. And sometimes I get a little bit on my elbows. And I always wondered what it was and never really looked into it too much until it started spreading to my joints and causing that kind of crippling pain. So I started to bring the diet connection into it with the line of work that I've been in for the last 10 or 15 years. And also the fact that when I went on a low carb or ketogenic diet, which is a kind of a whole food diet, I thought, that's interesting. My joint pain has gone down a lot, but it's not gone away. My weight is much better. My weight was never really a problem. I've always been relatively thin, but my body fat levels went down without even trying. I lost 1.5 stone, 1.75 stone over a couple of years while trying to keep my weight up, eating all the stuff that I was conditioned to believe for the last 30 years that would cause weight gain, like fats and butter and cream and cheese and eggs. But what I did notice was that when I went on a more strict diet, if I took out vegetables out of my diet, funnily enough, I would have way less pain. My pain would be right down. And then I went down to a carnivore diet. Now, a carnivore diet, by its very nature, is, and the word in itself will give you an idea what it is. It's a meat or animal-based food products only. So that would include steak, lamb, fish, pork, duck, any type of meat you can imagine, dairy products, cream, butter, yogurt, milk, and then what else is there on a carnivore diet? Some people include coffee, although I'm not convinced it's good for you. From an autoimmune point of view, it's definitely not good for you. It's good for everything else. It speeds up your metabolism a little bit. It suppresses appetite a little bit. It has some antioxidants in it. You could argue whether they're worth it or not if you're getting all the anti-nutrients and phytochemicals that come with it as well. But a carnivore diet is really interesting. If you look up, there's a website called, I think it's called meatrx.com. I'd have to look that up just to be doubly sure. It used to be called Meat Heals. Let me just see. if it's called MeatRx. Carnivore.diet. Uh, yeah, even if you look up, oh, there's one. Sorry, Rivero. They've rebranded again. Revero. So if you look that up, what you'll see on it is people talking about getting rid of psoriasis, crippling arthritis, lupus, putting type 1 diabetes completely in remission, multiple sclerosis getting much better. A lot of conditions that we would have thought were impossible to get rid of when we were told just to go on immunosuppressants, which my wife was before she got rid of her arthritis as well. And all these dangerous medications, these tough medications for your body to go on, these immunosuppressants, which are not good and bring their own dangers along with them. So what you see is a lot of people talking about these conditions and going, I got rid of all these conditions. My blood pressure went away. My, stuff that sounds miraculous, that you're thinking that couldn't be the case. What is so magical and so healing about these animal foods? Now, to my mind, and I've done quite a lot of research on it, it's less about what's so magical and healing with animal-based foods and more about what you have to eliminate from your diet to only eat animal foods. So you have to eliminate bread, rice, pasta, cereals, granola bars, frozen pizzas, takeaways, alcohol, everything. You're eliminating everything that could be bad for you. Chocolate, sweets, ice cream, everything. So, and I'll hold my hand up and say it is really extreme. It's really extreme. And extreme is not necessarily bad, because you could also argue the point that what's really extreme is eating a completely species inappropriate diet where we're shoveling sugar and cornflakes and refined greens and cereals and carbs down our throat, and we're all getting sick. 88% of people have some metabolic health disorder. So they have either blood pressure or pre-diabetes, weight around the midsection, low HDL, high triglycerides. They have one of those markers of metabolic poor health or ill health. That's what's extreme to my mind. I think that's extreme, is eating a diet when it's almost become normal. And I say this with the utmost of respect, but it's become unusual for someone to be a healthy weight. And there's actually a form of kind of body dysmorphia that I encounter all the time. I'm around 13 stone. I don't carry much body fat just because I eat a kind of extreme diet, I eat more of a carnivore diet. And people will often say, oh God, you're very thin. And by BMI, by body composition, and by health standards, I'm not thin at all. And we look at kids and go, oh, they're a bit on the thin side. If you look at a school photo, it's really interesting, from the 50s or 60s, the kids look emaciated. And the reason they look emaciated is because they're at a healthy weight. But we have this new view of people where we say, if you go below what I'm used to, and what you're used to is overweight and obese most of the time, then that's unhealthy. And you should probably go and eat something that helps you put on weight. So we get this kind of dysmorphia with body shape and what size we feel people should be. But anyway, the carnivore diet, the reason the carnivore diet works so well is both that meat and dairy products are extremely nutritionally complete from a macro and micronutrient point of view. Anyone who tells you that you have to eat fruits and vegetables and you have to eat whole grains and you have to have fiber doesn't truly understand how the human body works. And I know that's kind of sounds like a harsh statement, but we've known this for a long, long time. Remote tribes around the world, like the Inuit, the Hadza, the Kikuyu tribe, the Maasai tribe, particularly the Inuits and the Maasai, eat a diet that's almost exclusively meat and animal products, tend to get little or no heart disease, no diabetes, very little neurological disorders. They're extremely, extremely healthy. And obesity is just unheard of in their tribe, unheard of. And that is irrespective of and independent to exercise and movement status, meaning that if they don't exercise at all, they still never gain weight. So the idea that it's because they're going around hunting 4 to 6 hours a day, it's not actually. Even people who are in roles, and no, this is not any statement on gender or roles or anything like that, but even females who tend to be at home in those particular tribes, taking care of the family and that sort of stuff, and those more traditional, we'll call them, roles, they tend not to gain weight. People who are elderly or infirm or who are being cared for, have head injuries or in wheelchairs, almost never gain weight because they're eating a species appropriate diet. And the food, as nature intended, does not cause inappropriate weight gain or metabolic dysfunction. It's almost as simple as that. So the carnivore diet is, just to give you a brief outline of what it is the ultimate elimination diet. So for me, I went on the carnivore diet and I noticed that my joint pain went away maybe 90%, but my carnivore diet at the time, we'd say 2 months ago, 5 or 6 weeks ago even, was it contained non-carnivore, technically non-animal foods in it. So I would have had a little bit of fruit, the odd bit of strawberries, I'd have the occasional, packet of raspberries or something like that. And I was also drinking coffee every morning without dairy. I would have it with coconut milk. And then I realized that there were certain days where my pain levels would go way up as well. And I couldn't figure out what it was because I was carnivore. I was eating such a limited amount of food. So I stripped out coffee and things got better again. I stripped out eggs and things got even better again. So I have almost no pain at the moment. So you will see two very well-known people who are advocates of this way of eating and the much more extreme form of it, just to eliminate really, really aggressive autoimmune conditions, which could have killed them, were Jordan Peterson, who is the, psychologist, one or the other, wrote the book 12 Rules for Life, really well-known guy, controversial kind of a figure because of his stance on various different ideologies and gender pronouns, all that sort of stuff. He got big in that space, but he eats nothing but red meat and salt and water. Completely got rid of his depression, loads of joint issues and autoimmune conditions that he had. His daughter, Michaela Peterson, a really good example of it. She originally had, I think she had a couple of joints replaced when she was 12 or 13. They told her she was only going to live to a certain age. She was basically, her joints were all going to break down. And she realized it was dietary induced, went on a carnivore diet and turned all that around. Dr. Sean Baker, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Paul Saladino, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, Chaffee. They're people who are all worth listening to. My two favorite doctors in this kind of carnivore style of things. Dr. Anthony Chaffee is brilliant, Chaffee. And the other one that's really good if you're interested in carnivore as a means for both weight loss and treating autoimmune conditions and inflammatory disorders is Dr. Ken Berry, and who's the other one? Dr. Paul Mason is very good as well. He's not strict carnivore, but he's very much whole food and animal based. So it's something that's worth looking into. So to my mind, I would say I'll give an example. My wife and my brother no longer have autoimmune conditions and their gut is pretty healed up. So I would say to them, look, low carb or keto is going to be good for you. It'll keep your body fat lean, it'll keep your energy good, it'll prevent you getting diabetes, potentially Alzheimer's, and lots of the hormone positive cancers that we know highly correlate with high blood sugar levels. But if you have an autoimmune disorder, something like psoriasis, eczema, even mental health disorders, loads of those are rooted in gut dysfunction as well, because the gut is connected to the brain by the vagus nerve as well as other mechanisms and by other means. I would consider going on a carnivore diet. For me, it's been transformational. And the concerns around red meat and cancer and saturated fat and cholesterol are just dead in the water now. The research is more than clear. A whole food animal-based diet does not increase your risk of cancer or heart disease. In fact, it may prevent you getting both of those conditions. So thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to my musings on a carnivore diet and hear about my own experience. Have a good day, and we will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.